Hey everybody, I'm so glad you can join us today. Now, listen, this episode's going to be a little different. If you have little ears around, you might want to just push pause for a while and take a break and listen to this episode when you don't. Although I feel like we're going to talk about some things that have a lot of value to young people in our life, and we'll discuss that during the podcast, I do think that it's in your best interest to listen to it first to see if there is a young lady or a young man that you would like to share this information with and what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about, have you paused it yet? Sex.
So before we get into the topic today, I am going to ask Nicole a few questions. And since it's the holidays, they're all Christmas themed.
Okay.
So, what is your favorite Christmas movie? Old school, current?
It's not even, I don't even have to second guess it because I've already watched it twice.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. I'm excited.
So, the movie The Holiday.
I love that movie.
That movie
I watched
is
it
the
too.
best.
Yes.
It played, okay, so the other day it was on TV.
Yes.
And it played back to back, and I watched it the first time, and then Elena walked in about halfway through it, and then it started over again. I was like, are you going to watch it again with me? And she was like, no, Mom, I have things to do. But guess what she sat and did? She watched the whole thing with me, and I watched it again. I absolutely love that movie. I
do too.
Everything about the characters, and I love it. So that, there's just hands down, that is actually my favorite movie all around. That's not just during the holidays.
Really?
Yeah, I love it.
I know, I love it. But I only watch it at Christmas time. We bought it, and we've watched it, I think, twice, too. It's one of our favorites.
So good.
It is. The casting was perfect.
Yes. So good.
Jack Black is hilarious.
He is so great.
Yeah.
Like, you fall for him in there. Yes. No,
Yeah.
It's every character
Everyone
is the
yeah.
best.
Absolutely.
I even love it down to, I can't think of the characters right now, but the older gentleman who is, has done like film. Arthur. Yes. Like, I love him too. Like, I love everybody in that movie. It's such a feel-good movie. Their love stories are just beautiful.
Yes.
They get through some storylines of toxic people in our lives and how we keep falling for it and then getting them out. Like, it's just, if you have not seen it, which I'm just going to assume you all have, but if you have not seen it, that needs to be a Christmas movie of yours for sure.
Yeah. I love that one. Okay, number 2. Okay, first of all, how did I not know this about you? And we need to have a movie night and watch this movie together.
I'm in any day.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2, eggnog. Yes or no?
Yes.
Really?
But I don't drink it now.
Okay.
My mom would make eggnog when we were little with real raw eggs. So, right, like that's like taboo now, right? Like, I mean, every so often we snitch the cookie dough, but yet you're not supposed to eat it because it has raw eggs. And back in the day, Mom made eggnog with real eggs. And so when I say yes, it's because it goes back to when I had real eggnog. I do not buy it at the grocery store there. To me, that's not real eggnog. So I'm going to say the answer is yes, although I don't drink it anymore.
So let's talk about sex over wine.
Yes,
So
we both decided to have
Cheers.
a glass of wine. This is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to start it with one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk about it. Because not so long ago, I mean, within the last couple years, I heard a statistic that ticked me off. And so I have brought this up when I'm in groups of women before because I feel like, how can I get this around? How can I get this news out there? Because it ticked me off so much, I felt like other people needed to know about it.
I was shocked when you told me.
Yeah. So the statistic that I heard is that only 25% of women have vaginal orgasms. Here's why it ticked me off. Because the way I grew up watching Hollywood made it look like all a man needed to do was penetrate a woman, and then they're in this mind-blowing bliss, right? Like that's what happened. So because of that, I am one of the 75% of women, which is majority of women, that does not have vaginal orgasms. But I felt like a failure for all the years that I have, been having intercourse. Like, what is wrong with me? I've felt like that. And I've heard messages, maybe even some of them are Christian messages, like, love and intimacy, and if you just connect in, then it's going to happen for you. No, it doesn't. It doesn't happen for me. And to find out that the majority of women don't have vaginal orgasms, and just the minority of women do, I was ticked. And so that kind of brought up this topic that I really felt like we need to talk about these things, because I'm hoping there's some person out there that this is going to resonate with, and you're going to realize, like, you are not a failure either, like, at that whole thing. And so you and I have talked about it before, just how Hollywood, the film industry, sets us up our whole life. We've been watching romance movies since we were young. I mean, let's go down to Dirty Dancing and, like all these great things, these great movies early on, though. But we visualize what it's going to look like for us. And it has not served us well, I would say, in our marriage. At least it hasn't served me well. So I feel like it's a topic that I really would like to talk about. And furthermore, we can break it down as we go. But I also feel like I want my daughters to know this. I want to have this conversation with my daughters before they get married, for them to know that all these things that they've watched, like, that's just film. Like, if we really watched how those scenes got done, like, there's nothing magical or romantic about them. They're probably annoying, and they spend a full day in bed trying to get the right angles, and it has to be horrible. But that's just the film that tries to spark an emotion and a feeling inside of us. And for them to not base their relationship that they're forming with their husband on what they've been watching all those years. And furthermore, I want to have this talk with my son too.
Yes.
That this is not, like, women don't take what you see on TV or in music and think that that's the way that women want to be loved on and treated, and that's how relationships grow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the topic I wanted to bring in front of us today.
Yeah, I love this topic, and in fact, as we're talking about it, the movie The Holiday even jumps into my head, because you see two totally different relationships with the two character groups, and what are their names? Cameron Diaz and Jude Law. I don't remember their names in the movie, but the relationship they're playing, they have sex the first night they meet, and they cannot keep their hands off each other, and it looks like it's fun and exciting and new. And you're right, like, Hollywood portrays sex and intimacy to be the same thing, and it's not at all. And I do think, I know I was set up as a kid to think that's what sex looked like, or every time. Like, I had this image that you always had to be sexy and desirable in order for your husband to want you. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what you saw. And it was like, well, where's the intimacy? Where is that real connection that really matters? And, man, I kind of get pissed off when I see it, because I'm like, you are warping the minds of men that are creating these thoughts as to how a woman should respond. And you miss out on truly being together and being one with your partner. It also portrays you better be sleeping around a lot before you get married.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Because if you
it doesn't speak of any of the scars or the baggage that you carry into marriage that comes with that type of activity. It's just it's fun. And listen, we're seeing it was one of the best all-time shows, like Friends, for example. Or, I mean, we're seeing it we grew up in sitcoms also, that these relationships can be promiscuous. I mean, I loved Sex and the City. Like, I loved watching that show, but they rarely, like, it's only the fun, the good, like the natural, right? Sex is natural. Like that they keep playing off in these shows, and certainly wounds and baggage and comparison and all those things that the real life stuff doesn't show up.
What you see on TV is a performance. And that cannot be what's expected in your bedroom. Like, it's so ingenuine.
Yeah, I was even thinking of a show I watched that a husband came up behind the wife, and the kids are running around playing, and he like squeezed her rear and whispers in her ear that he wants to meet her in the bedroom in like 5 minutes, and she's like, okay, I'll be there. And I'm thinking, what wife washing the dishes with kids running around is like, yeah, I'll be in the bedroom in 5 minutes. Now listen, maybe the few of you are like this, but that type of picture, if a male is watching that in a movie, man, if my husband is watching that in a movie, man, he must be disappointed in the way that I interact when he comes and squeezes my butt when I'm stirring food on the stove, because I don't want to be touched in that way while I'm cooking. Like, it's just, to me, it's an invasion of my private space, because I'm in the middle of stuff. And if the kids are around and if I'm cooking meals, like, that's just not how I want to be touched or handled. He knows that. But the point is, if he sees it another way, like, there has to even be something in him that maybe feels a little empty. Like, why can't we have this going on in our marriage? But you're right. It's a performance.
I was just thinking, as you're talking and describing the scene of this woman is cooking and she is trying to prepare for her family, prepare a meal. And she's probably also thinking about all the things she has to do to get the kids to sleep. Like, what time is it? I've got to do baths. I've got to do this. They need to eat. Have you done your homework? Like, all these things are going through her mind. And she may even be getting work phone calls. And then her husband comes up and is like, if she were to reject him, he's going to feel like she rejected him. When she's really like, hold up, look at all this stuff I have going on while you sit there and play phone games or whatever. And I'm thinking that enjoyment to be with your spouse too comes when you're really living sexually. To be with your spouse sexually is when you're truly living life as partners. Have you seen this? Like, when you and Ben come together, I know it's true when Ken and I come together, when we're tracking together, when we're like truly being a team in life.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
I'm so much more physically attracted to him, sexually attracted to him. But if he's just going to come up and grope me while I'm doing all these things and then get upset that I didn't respond like he saw on a TV show, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that pushes us further away. And that's not what's portrayed. And that's not what people expect either. And they take it personally.
Yeah, and since it's a subject that we don't talk about, I mean, it's such a taboo subject. I mean, you and I, we only talked about this one time, and then I held back and I was like, okay, this needs to be a podcast. Like, you and I don't talk about it, and you and I talk about everything.
Yeah.
But we rarely talk about sex because it's a taboo subject. You don't talk about it. But on the other hand, it's a huge part of our lives, and it's also a huge way that people feel success or failure. Like, a lot of things in our life are tied around the way that we connect with our spouse in the bedroom. And so if we have 75% of the population feeling like, and listen, let's not even talk about the fact that there is a huge, and this is true, there's a huge part of the population that have not figured out how to get to the place that they can have an orgasm with their husband, because what they've seen is actual vaginal penetration should be it. Mm-hmm. So they're faking it. I mean, there's a lot of women out there that have never been able to experience with their husband, because they don't even know that they're going down the wrong avenue because they're normal.
Right. Yeah.
That stinks. It makes me mad. Seriously, it fires me up. Like, it makes me frustrated.
And think about how that sets up marriages to fail. Mm-hmm. Right? Because now the man is like, you seem like a cold fish. You seem like you don't want me. And she's like, I'm tired. This isn't doing it for me, And if that is a huge part of who he is, and if that validates him, right, he could easily go look for somebody who does excite him more.
Yeah, I mean, if he's
women
not
can do
feeling
the same
valued,
thing.
If a partner in a marriage is not feeling valued, then, I mean, that is how extramarital affairs are marital. I guess every marital affair is extra, but that's how it happens.
Yeah.
And again, now we realize that if that avenue is taken, then all of a sudden something seems new and exciting and there's adrenaline pumping. Mm-hmm. And the one thing you talked about is that person that you're sneaking off to be with isn't the person that's doing your laundry.
Right.
It's not the person that is scrubbing your bathtub. It's not the person that is caring for your kids.
Right.
Of course, that is way more appealing because it's
the other person.
Yeah.
Who's not tired and worn out. And
no, it's freedom is what it feels like there. And then you come home to the chains of disappointment.
And maybe even nagging. Mm-hmm. So after, I don't know which kid it was, one of the kids, it was probably like second or third, my hormones changed. And I would have been in that 75% during that time. Like, I was tired. I was exhausted. I did feel like there was a shift in my hormones. And then you couple that on with all the other things that were going on in my life. And Ken said, it feels like you're doing this out of obligation. And I was like, well, I am. It is not you. It is me. Mm-hmm. Truly. Like, it was a truly me moment. But nobody had told me that when you have a baby, your hormones go through all kinds of craziness. And not even right after delivery, for like years, because then you're nursing and then like you're tired and like your body is continuing to change.
I'm always fascinated by people that I feel like they're better women as far as pleasing their husband, of the women that have babies back to back. Like all of a sudden, their kids are like 12 months apart or 15 months apart. And I'm like, how did you even do that? Like, that didn't even have a chance. That's like, I'm not sure how this happened, but man, that's crazy. But yeah, because yes, like
you're like, don't touch me. I'm leaking from everything in my body.
When I'm nursing, no. I mean, no. Like, and then everything keeps changing. It really does. And the thing is if we have expectations that come off of what we are seeing on media, media or whatever. If we have expectations that way, and we're not talking about it, because I think that's also, it's such a hard thing to talk to your spouse about.
Okay, what about not only that, but it's what you're competing with if your spouse is looking at porn.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that.
And this is what I'm up against. Some impossible standard to meet. Well, you always feel subpar.
Yeah, and listen, that is there are many households that are dealing with that. It's an increasingly horrific addiction. I'm going to call it horrific because it really can it doesn't just damage the marriage or the person that's competing with it. It also damages the viewer.
Yeah.
Like
that's right.
It stimulates them in ways that they can't just. I mean, it takes work to be able to shut off those wire and fire neurons that are. There's new pathways in your brain that are formed during all of that.
And
I didn't even think about.
You may feel like you're not enough, and your husband may feel like you're not enough. So,
and he may not like that it takes more and more and more. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Like, we've got to talk about this stuff. We got to talk about this stuff. We got to talk. I need you, listeners, male and female, to tell people you know that only 25% of females have vaginal orgasms. Like, that should not be a statistic that we don't know. Like, it needs to be talked about. We need to stop worshiping these scenes in movies or
setting it up as the ideal.
Yes.
What is the goal you have for your relationship? And if it is not like when you're around somebody every moment you're wanting to rip their clothes off, then it's subpar. Like, that is a horrible standard, but it's what's being put out there in front of us. And we embrace it because those are exciting stories, like, and you like to feel that way. Like, you like to have that drive, but and that excitement and that desire for somebody.
Yeah, and I think we also need to acknowledge that we acknowledge the baggage that we have from any sexual history that we have, and it may be, it may be just premarital with your husband, I mean, because even if you had a premarital sexual relationship with your husband, you were still sneaking around, you could still go back to the good old days of that and I'm going to say sin enters and makes things seem more fun, but we carry that baggage with us. So why can't it just be like then? Or if you have previous partners, making comparisons to situations, any hurts that you may have, any way you were violated early in your life, we love to think that doesn't matter. But if you don't acknowledge that it does matter and that it does show up in your marriage now, I think that we can't truly get to a super healthy sexual relationship with our spouse until we acknowledge those violations, that baggage, and the things that we have seen, watched in our belief system around sexual health. If we don't acknowledge any of that, then we just keep being in a place of comparison and disappointment.
That is such a great point.
Or feeling like we need to be something we're not.
Yeah.
I mean, sex is a gift. It is literally a gift from our Creator. But when we're hanging out in comparison, like, we don't truly get to experience that gift for what it is.
No, and when you're younger, if you grow up in a Christian home and the value is you do not have sex before you get married, it doesn't feel like a gift you're waiting on. It feels like a punishment keeping you from, like, taking your relationship, making it better with whomever you're dating, because you don't understand it. You're driven by hormones, but to see it as a gift, yeah, that is special. And then you're right, like, all this other baggage comes with it. If you don't wait until you get married with your spouse, and too often we do just try to stuff it down and pretend like it didn't happen, but it did. You know what I mean? Like,
it did.
Yeah.
And I really think that so even if you've been married 20 years, I think addressing that baggage that you have brought in from the past can be so healthy and healing.
It can be, but you need to agree to have a conversation about it, and you may need somebody to help facilitate that conversation with you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So before Ken and I got married, I felt the need to confess, like, everything I thought he should know about. he did not enjoy that conversation. And he said, you don't have to do this. And I said, I do. Like, you need to know, like, this is everything I've done that I can think of at this moment. And I was like, because you are entering a real, you're having to make a decision about marrying me. And I just couldn't feel like, I don't like secrets. I don't like having secrets. And so I did not want to go into our relationship with any secrets, on my end at least, like whatever I could do. And I think if I sat down and had that conversation with him now, he would not enjoy. He didn't like it then. I think he really wouldn't like it now. But
okay, do you know what I'm visualizing in my head? Okay, what is that? It's in Goonies when the kid that the curly hair. Do you know Goonies? Have you watched Goonies?
it was forever ago.
So there's this point. I can't think of his name right now. And he was eating all these chocolate bars, and then he gets caught by the bad family, and they're like, tell me everything you know. And he starts like confessing. He's like, one time I walked in and I saw so-and-so do this. And he like confessed everything. So all of a sudden I'm visualizing your full-blown confession being this like, let me tell you everything. But
it wasn't even tearful. It was like, oh, you want to marry me? Okay, let me
give you the
like,
lowdown.
I have to be super honest about everything. And for me, it was freedom. Because I was like, this is the truth about it. And there's so much value in having that conversation to deal with, because there was some violation too that I had to admit. Now there were tears there because that was hard to say out loud. But yeah, I mean, there's freedom. There's so much freedom in that, and just being super honest with your spouse.
Yeah. I remember having a discussion. I can't even remember what it's about now, so I must have truly been able to let it go when I actually had it. But I had a discussion with Ben about something that was definitely affecting our intimate relationship. And it may have only been a year ago, and I don't remember what the event was. Not that I would really like give you a detail right now, but I said it, and it was hard for me to say it. And it was embarrassing maybe for me to say, but then I think it was a relief for him, because he was always trying to figure out, maybe he was thinking there was something wrong with him, but really a hesitation came from something. It was not him. It was before him.
Yeah.
And so therefore, like, I had to, but when I said it to him, it was a hard thing to say, but yet brought clarity to him. And so I think that was healing. I mean, the fact that I can't even in my mind remember exactly what it was, I just remember the relief that he felt when I talked about it.
So this is a great point, because if you were aggressively violent, if you were raped if you were raped and it was
or
violent,
manipulated.
Or manipulated.
I mean, you can go into anything. Manipulated, felt, pressured to.
If that was aggressive, and then your husband sees on TV like, yeah, a woman likes when you grab her, and if you resist, if they don't know what happened, they don't understand, why are you resisting me? Like, not resisting you like in a bad way, but
and
just
they don't
like,
feel that you trust them.
Yeah. Yes.
And it had nothing to do with them. Yeah.
That's a really hard subject to breach, though, because there's a fear that you're going to be looked at differently, and sometimes you will be looked at differently, in all honesty. That's a tough topic, but it's always worth it. I mean, carrying that secret is not going to benefit anybody.
No. So, I mean, overall, like, this is really why I wanted to have this conversation, because I feel like there's a lot of things about this topic that we feel are secretive, that we feel that we have to carry the burden ourselves, or that we're alone in.
Yeah.
And I'm fed up with it. I'm fed up with it. And
Have you had enough?
I've had enough. Yeah. So, and that's why I said in the very beginning, there may be young people in your life, because I'm going to be fine with my daughters listening to this. I would need them to know the statistic. I need them to know that if they're not in that 25%, they're in the majority, not that there's something wrong with them. And I need my son to know that really what you're seeing on television is not a creation of intimacy between a husband and a wife. It's a portrayal of a scene in a movie that entertains us.
Right.
And I feel like it's not talked about enough, and it's something that I absolutely want my kids to walk away with and walk into their relationships, because I want them to have an amazing sex life with their spouse.
Yes.
Amazing. But they can't take what Hollywood has told them and use that as their platform to know what a healthy, amazing sex life looks like.
Okay, let's even take it back to the church. Because this is something that really hits a hot button for me. One that we've touched on already is there's a huge difference between sex and intimacy. And that does not get communicated enough. But let's take it back to the church. So if you're raised in a Christian religion and you're told you do not have sex before marriage, it's bad to have sex before marriage, it's bad to have sex before marriage, like, you are bad, you have sinned, right? And then you get married, where's the rest of the church saying, oh, no, well, this is a gift. Enjoy. You should enjoy each other sexually. You should enjoy each other's bodies. Like, it feels so left off. It's just like, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. Okay, you're married? Okay.
We don't talk about it anymore.
We don't talk about it. Well, what about when it's not going so well? When sex isn't going so well? What do you do then? I remember we were listening to... No, we didn't listen to it. Somebody introduced us to a podcast about sex in your marriage.
One Extraordinary Marriage. Yeah,
yes.
It's
okay.
I'm the one that brought it to the group. So a little background on this podcast. So I'm endorsing this podcast on our podcast, but it's called One Extraordinary Marriage. My husband started listening to it in order to try to just figure out how to continue to be better connected to me. So he comes to me and he's like, I want you to listen to this podcast. It does talk a lot about sex. And I was like, oh, you want me to listen to a sex podcast, do ya? Sure you do.
Yeah. Because it's going to help our marriage.
Yeah. I get it. And I resisted for a while. I mean, to be honest here, I was like, you listen to the sex podcast. Go for it. I'm not doing that. And then I started thinking, he's listening to a sex podcast. Like, I need to figure out what he's listening to. It's pretty fantastic. Mm-hmm. It feels a little corny, like here and there, but yet every episode that I listen to, it resonates with me. Mm-hmm. Probably every episode resonates with me. And
it helps you to know how to address subjects with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And topics.
Yes. And so let me tell you, that statistic came from that podcast.
Did it?
It did. It was one of those podcasts where I heard that the first time and I was like, what? That's a bunch of crap. But really what it comes down to is that podcast, I do believe that that couple does it in order to save marriages. Mm-hmm. And I think that they are very successful in their mission. Yeah. So I do recommend that podcast, One Extraordinary Marriage. There's a ton of them now. Like, they've been putting it out forever. So you can go back and pick and start listening. But they're doing a special thing. And they're talking about the stuff that we're not talking about, what we should be talking about. And they do also, they bring the Lord into it. Like, because he is a part of it. He's an active part of our sex life. I mean, like, he's the one that created it. So think that... So I agree with you. I do feel like the church is failing in setting up youth and then setting up marriages in that avenue, because it is a taboo subject.
Yeah, because it's painted as just don't do this, just don't do this, just don't do this. Like, it's just a boundary. Not that it's a gift. And, but on that podcast, they did a challenge. Do you remember this challenge?
Yes.
The 60-day sex challenge.
Yeah.
And you had sex every day for 60 days. And I was like, that sounds terrible.
Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they did give you, like, they said set the boundaries before, plan out your travel schedule, understand, like, these days so-and-so's traveling, so we aren't going to feel like we failed the 60-day challenge because we couldn't make it or whatever, or, like, around cycles and things. But I remember I was like, we're doing the 60-day challenge, and you were like, you are?
How many days did you make it in?
I don't know.
Do you remember? Because I tried the 7-day.
A lot, and
I tried the 7-day challenge. I think we made it to like day 4, and I was like, and the next night I was like, we have to, like, we just did it 4 days in a row.
Yes.
But yet, oh my gosh, there's so much.
But okay, so there was a time we did not make it. We didn't make it 30 days. I don't know how many days we made it. We made it. I don't know.
Okay,
it was a significant amount. It was more than 4 days.
If it's more than 4, I'm so impressed.
But it was funny because at one point I was like, "So what do we do tonight?" Like, and that was what they wanted you to get to. Like, find ways to be intimate with your spouse and to learn them in a new way. And I was like, that is what they're trying to teach us. And I don't know that Ken listened to that podcast, but I had listened to it. So it really resonated with me, and I saw what it was they were trying to do. And I was like, man, if I could get to 60 days, things would probably be really good. But I did not get to 60. I think we were also running a lot during that time, and I was like, I think we were training for a race. And I was like, this is not a good thing.
Okay, so really, I want to encourage everybody at this point, like all listeners, married listeners in particular, male and female,
yes,
to subscribe to that podcast, because they are talking about these things. And they're talking about if you do have violation in your past, or you've had sexual hurt, or you're dealing with church guilt, all of those things, they do address those all in different episodes in this. Like, it gets down to the nitty-gritty is really what it comes around. They're talking about the things that the world is not talking about, but man, we need to talk about. If we want healthy marriages, we need to be talking about this stuff, and they're talking about it. And that's really why I love them so much. I'm glad you brought it up. When I used their statistic, I didn't know, like, if we were going to talk about their particular podcast or not, but I
didn't even know that's where it came from.
Yeah.
And they really do talk about intimacy a lot, which is important to me. I mean, I've seen it over and over, and I'm just like, ugh, that is not intimacy. That is just sex. You could have that experience with anybody that has the anatomical makeup that gave you that experience, but true intimacy is really special, and I think it's rare. And that podcast, even though they talk a lot about sex, they actually talk a lot about building intimacy.
Yes, and so it's rare, but it is available
for every single couple.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's commitment, and it's work.
I should say it's available for every single marriage.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for wine time.
Yeah.
And thanks for bringing this subject, helping me bring this subject to light, because it is something that I get so frustrated that I feel that women are just feeling set up. They're just feeling set up by Hollywood, and
to fail.
I want you to know that I get you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm with you. So Thanks for talking about this with me today.
And I love that we can have these conversations, because you can't have these conversations with anybody, So seek out that community where you can truly have conversations and say, listen, we've got some issues going on.
Mm-hmm. And truly speak your heart, not speak what you think is going to be what somebody else wants to hear.
Right.
But speak where you're at.
Yeah, because it's not going to get better if you don't address the real situation.
It's true.
I feel like we started out this episode to talk to women about, like you said, that statistic that 75% of women don't have a vaginal orgasm. And to help them feel like you haven't failed, you're not a failure. There's nothing wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we could almost do a whole episode just for men to say, let us tell you a little bit about women. And what a blessing that would be for marriages and for women to say, these are the things I've wanted to say, but I didn't have the courage to say it, or I felt weird telling my husband, or, I felt like if I told him this is how I feel, I was letting him down.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if you liked what you heard today and you'd like to learn more about our coaching business, go to www.liveyourdesign.life. Please go and give us a rating and leave us some comments. We'd love to hear what you're thinking. So leave us a comment and we read every single one. Have a great day.